Pleasant good morning to everyone. A pleasant good morning. Glad to have you here, and so glad to see so many people are here on time. Really going against the Bahamian way, and I appreciate that. Okay, well, let's get started. Let's jump right into it. My name is Matt Sweeting. I'm the CEO and real estate expert at OAK Bahamas, and my team and I warmly welcome you to this discussion today about credit scores and real estate. And we know that's not the most sexiest topic, but we're going to try to make it interactive, engaging, and fun. And so we have some presenters. We're glad to be partnered with CRIF, the organization responsible for establishing the Credit Bureau here in the Bahamas. And so we look forward to their presentation and going into full detail, and thereafter answering questions about how this Credit Bureau is going to be established here and how it's going to affect the Bahamian economy and the financial industry at large, and as it's entitled, how it will affect real estate as well. All right, so we look forward to getting into this discussion. We were overwhelmed by the response. Over 200 people registered, and so we expect people to continue to flow in. And so if you have your questions, go ahead and note them down, because when we get into the question and answer section, we'd like to call on you to be able to ask a question that they may not have directly addressed in their presentation. OAK Bahamas is a full-service real estate agency servicing predominantly New Providence in the under $1 million market. And so if you know anyone that's looking to buy, sell, or rent real estate, feel free to reach out to us at 242-676-6767 or visit our website, oneoakbahamas.com. A lot of people ask, what does the OAK mean? What does the acronym stand for? Well, it has nothing to do with trees at all. One Oak actually stands for one of a kind. And we decided on that name because our service, our properties, and our attention to detail is what sets us apart. So without further ado, let's invite T. Marissa Nixon to the panel to introduce CRIF and their team. Marissa, thanks for being on.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marissa Nixon, and I am the sales manager here in the Bahamas that represents CRIF, along with our team that we have here. We also have on the call today Enrico Caruso, and we also have Michelle Stubbs. I'm going to give a brief introduction of both that will be speaking today. Mr. Caruso is our market and global account management leader. He's also a member of our supervisory board of CRIF in Poland, and he joined CRIF in 2004. Since 2008, he has been responsible for the international business development and setting up all of our CRIF business units in the CEE region. Michelle Stubbs. She's a banker and entrepreneur. She has been 30 plus years in the financial services industry. She has worked with Citibank. She's also worked with Scotiabank, and she spent more than 25 years in various positions, mostly compliance. She served on the financial services boards, including the Central Bank of the Bahamas, and also Holdco and Alive. She has a bachelor's degree in finance and accounting from Pace University, New York, MBA at the University of Miami. She also has her TEP, so Trust and Estate Planner license. She's also a chartered risk analyst and also a CFA. Today, she represents CRIF board as a consultant, and she's also part of our marketing team. Ms. Stubbs routinely advises national civic church organizations, different groups and organizations, and she also currently serves as the CFA Society Vice President in the Bahamas. So I just want to welcome both of our speakers and hand the floor over to Mr. Caruso for the presentation.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, Michelle, I think actually you should start, right?
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So let me just
Good
try to
morning.
share the presentation. Do you want me to share the presentation, or you want to start with something else before?
No, we'll share the presentation. I just want to say good morning to all. I'm so excited to be here and glad there's so many persons taking the time in the middle of the day to spend with us so that we can understand a little bit more about the Credit Bureau. And thank you, Marissa, for that introduction, although I'm not a charter holder. I am the vice president of the CFA Society, but currently not a charter holder. So I just want to make that disclaimer. So today we are talking about this exciting topic, the Credit Bureau. And so I know a lot of you have come on to see and hear how this is going to impact you, what it means for the Bahamas, what it means for real estate, especially in the Bahamas. And so we're going to start off, and like our host said, we're going to have an interactive time. If you have a question, you can write those down, and at the end, we'll be happy to answer those questions. So go to the next slide, Enrique. So I just want to give a little background on how we got here. So, and this Credit Bureau has been discussed for years. And I actually remember 20, 30 years ago, this was a big discussion in the Bahamas. Persons were looking to do it. I was actually in a group at the University of Miami who tried to do this as a project. And we're talking 30 plus years ago. And so it's been discussed a long time. How do we get the Credit Bureau coming to the Bahamas? In recent times, the IMF and World Bank recommended to the Bahamas government, you know, you are kind of grown up as a financial sector. You're a stable economy. We think that the Credit Bureau would be a wonderful initiative for you to consider. And so, of course, the Bahamas government looked at that. You know, the World Bank doesn't get to tell us what to do, but of course, when they make a recommendation, we take it seriously. And so the Bahamas government in 2018 created the Credit Reporting Act. And then in 2019, the Credit Reporting Regulations. And so this provided the framework for the Credit Bureau to get established in the Bahamas. So after 30 plus years, all the discussion, we launched and took that big plunge in 2018, 2019, when we created the legal framework. And then, of course, to give you a little process of how we got here today. So when the government created the legislation and it went to Parliament and passed, they started the process. They said, we need to find some oversight for this. They said the central bank would be a good place because a lot of the Credit Bureau will be working with the banks and the local financial institutions in the Bahamas. So they designate the central bank to be the place where this would be housed, so to speak, and the oversight would be performed by the central bank, and the central bank would be the regulator of sorts. Why this is not a financial institution, they thought the central bank would be the best place to put the Credit Bureau. And so the central bank started on an initiative to find somebody who they could partner with, who the government of the Bahamas could partner with. And of course, they sent a tender process out. It went global. A lot of different companies sent in information and expressed interest in being a part of the Credit Bureau or being the initiator of the Credit Bureau in the Bahamas. And that tender process took quite a bit of time, almost a year. And emerging from that, the Bahamas government chose CRIF International. And so CRIF is who won the tender bid in 2019, and CRIF is who has been chosen to establish the Credit Bureau in the Bahamas. Next slide. And so just want to give you some highlight over about the regulation. We don't want to go deep into it, except to say that the Credit Bureau, the responsibility of overseeing the Credit Bureau is with the central bank, like I mentioned. And of course, the central bank has the task. They chose tender process. They manage the tender process through CRIF, and will make sure that anything that happens as it relates to the financial services industry, they'll be aware of, and they'll be able to monitor and ensure that everything happens in a way that's in line with what the government intended. Next slide. And so I just want to highlight a few things about the law. The big thing for everybody on the call and for everybody in the Bahamas is that we cannot get a credit report on you without your consent. So I want to highlight that in the first line, the consent of the data subject, who is the persons that we'll be getting credit reports on. We need your consent. And so the government was sure to put that in the act so that want to make you comfortable. And anytime anyone gets a credit report, they cannot get it unless you've given consent. And then I also want to highlight something that might be of interest to this group today is that the Credit Bureau initially is intended to work with banks for any credit facility that a data subject may want. But there's also some other matters that the government chose to put into the act so that as we grow as a country, the credit reports can be used for other things. And so if you look at the bottom of the screen, you see these things highlighted in orange. One of them that may be important to use for renewal of a tenancy agreement. So as we, as real estate landlords, we want to find a tenant The tenancy agreement could be one use that the credit report can help us in determining who we lend or who we actually rent our properties to. So it's intended to be used as a pre-employment check, probably in the future, to help us with debt matters, to be able to collect debt or purchase debt. And so there's a lot of uses built into the Credit Bureau Act. And so just want to highlight two of those for you. So next slide. Next slide. So CRIF, I'm going to allow Enrique to tell you who CRIF is, an international organization. He's going to give you some information on who CRIF is and what the experience of CRIF is, so why they were chosen to be the tender process of choice for the Bahamas government.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you for the introduction. Well, why we have been chosen, probably because we are also one of a kind somehow in the arena of the credit bureau providers. We are among the main 5 players, I would say, around the globe, together with Experian, with FICO, with Equifax, and Creatinfo. So first of all, I would like to share with you what CRIF does. What is the mission? What is CRIF mission? CRIF mission is to create value and new opportunities for consumers and businesses. When we say businesses, we provide value by offering data, solutions, consulting to improve their credit processes. And as far as consumers are concerned, we provide data solution, especially to have a more aware and healthier management of their finances. And we see that this is a quite important topic, especially in countries like Bahamas, where the credit bureau is something new, is something that people need to be familiar with. And today, actually, we are here also for this reason. This actually leads to another important mission of CRIF, which is the financial inclusion. Shell was mentioning before the initiating role of the World Bank in starting the credit bureau also in Bahamas. Well, one of the main goals is definitely the financial inclusion, and CRIF, by introducing more transparency, more standardization, and reducing the information asymmetry, definitely facilitate the financial inclusion. So this is definitely one of the benefit that Mr. Sweeting was mentioning at the beginning, the possibility for especially unbanked people, so people without, let's say, with a limited credit history to be included in the credit market. I don't want to spend too many words on the numbers regarding CRIF, but as you can see, we are an international company which is based in 4 continents with more than 5,000 employees. What is worth saying is that we started in 1988 actually with the first private credit bureau in Italy. And since then, we expanded with many different businesses that right now, not only when my mom, but also when my professional friends ask me what CRIF does, it's really hard to answer because we do many things. But if I have to, let's say, sum up, I would say that CRIF provides everything which is connected to the credit risk management, to banks, to non-banking entities. So everything which we are a knowledge company where knowledge is credit risk management. We are present in many countries, you can see in this list, but what is more important probably for you to know is where we are present with the established credit bureau, because we established a credit bureau in Italy in 1988, but since then we started to operate in many other different countries as a credit bureau. We have delivered 32 credit bureau projects in 29 countries, and in 19 countries, we actually operate as a credit bureau. We manage the credit bureau, like in Bahamas. But in other countries, we actually deliver the technological platform that other companies or even the central banks of those countries are using to run the credit bureau. This
Enrique,
is
so I'm
your,
just gonna,
yeah,
right.
go ahead.
So what is the credit bureau? I know a lot of times we can't connect the dots in our head, but you know, when we travel and we go to Florida and we get to the counter and they said, would you like a credit card? And they actually offer us it on the spot. They can do that in the US because everyone in the US has a credit score. They could put your name, your social security number into that computer, out pops your credit report or your credit score, and they can say, oh yes, you're credit worthy. We couldn't do that in the Bahamas because we've never had a method that we could use to kind of level set everybody and have a dynamic or a number or some indicator of who we were as it relates to credit risk. So that's where we're going to be going with the credit bureau. Everyone who becomes involved, everyone who has some type of facility in a bank will eventually have a credit score. And so the credit bureau is an information warehouse. It compiles information on how you've managed your credit over the years, how you've managed all of the debt facilities that you've had. And then it collects this information, puts it into this repository and creates a score for you as an individual. And so when you go to apply for your next credit facility, the bank may say, can we get your consent to get a credit report? And they will actually access CRIF's system and be able to get a report on you. And that report will give the banks the information as to how you've managed your credit facilities in recent times. So just so we understand, the decision is still going to be made by the banks. The banks can decide what they want to do, if they want to give you the loan or not give you the loan. The CRIF is just giving them some information that may be of help to them in determining who you are as it relates to credit risk. And just to be just to kind of give you some backdrop here, banks have always been risk rating persons. So this is not a new phenomenon. They just were doing it in a way that's unique to the bank. So Scotia may see you as an A client, Royal may see you as a B client, Fidelity may see you as a D client. And so everybody had their own way of measuring you before they decide to give you a loan. What the credit bureau is going to do is kind of bring it all together and give you some scoring that is going to be across the board, more of a level playing field. Everybody's assessed similarly. And so the score that comes out kind of helps reduce the subjectivity that has occurred over the years in the different banks. And so the credit bureau brings together a lot of different things. The consumer, it brings together the banking community, the cultures, companies, security, financial markets, association, and of course the regulations, and of course you, the consumer. So the credit bureau brings together a lot of this information that allows us to be able to look at different dynamics and create a credit score for you. Next slide.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shell. I mean, what you mentioned is very important. That actually 2 points that, in my opinion, are worthwhile highlighting. The first one is CRIF provides put together the information coming from the credit information providers like banks, like lenders, credit unions, or utilities, and give access to this information to the same credit information providers. But the decision whether to grant a loan or not is still ultimately the decision of the bank, for example. So CRIF is just providing information, and based on that, the bank is taking a decision. Also, because the bank is normally considering also other kind of information, with not only the information coming from the credit bureau. And the second point is that most of the times at the beginning, when we enter a new market, we establish a new credit bureau, they see the credit bureau as an IT project. So it's a database with some data which is shared by the community of banks or credit information providers in general. Well, what we see is that this is a country project, because as Mr. Sweden correctly mentioned at the beginning, this is a project, it's a country project which will have impact on the economy, not only on the credit market, but on the credit market, and consequently also on the economy of the country. And this is actually the goal of all the stakeholders who were having this commendable effort and initiative in establishing the credit bureau, and including also the World Bank, because we see that if we look at the chart of the doing business, we probably see that all the countries that started the credit bureau were able to climb this chart and improving considerably their position in this chart. So this is also the goal for Bahamas. And CRIF is in the middle in this complex metrics, because we need to deal with the politics, with the banking community, with the different. We need to also to include the specific culture of the country where we operate, and of course also consumer. We need to try to facilitate as much as possible the awareness of the consumers, and this is actually why today we are here with you to talk about the Credit Bureau. What is? Let's go more in let's talk more in the concrete terms now. What is actually the Credit Bureau doing every day? So we are first of all responsible to process the file with the data submitted from the provider, from the bank. So the bank is providing every month, for example, a bunch of data with the information related to its clients. What we do a two-step validation process. We do a pre-check of the data. We do a formal and logical check of the same data. Without getting too much in details, our responsibility, together with the responsibility of the CAPs, the credit information providers, is to ensure the quality of the data. It's very important that the data that we store in our database is accurate. We have a good quality of the data, because obviously then the result is that if you have some low quality data in the database, this low quality will be then shared in the report that the credit information provider will retrieve. So it's important to share to store a very high quality data. What Shell was mentioning before is actually here also summarized. The Credit Reporting Act foresees two categories of CAPs. Actually, the mandatory CAPs, which are currently in the process of providing the data to the Credit Bureau. We are talking about the commercial banks, insurance companies, financial and corporate service provider, credit unions, the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, the Bahamas Development Banks, and any other entity that the central bank might decide to designate. And by designation, so a legal entity that can be designated by the central bank, we see the utilities, the Bahamas Telecommunication Company, the Cable Bahamas, other public utilities like the Water and Sewerage Corporation, the Bahamas Power and Light. So these are companies that at one point can be designated by the central bank to become a credit information provider. Actually, recently, the telco and the utilities were designated to be such a provider. At the same time, again, it's very important that the credit information providers are taking all the necessary measures to satisfy in terms of consumer information, in terms of reliable information, in terms of accurate information, and updated. So this information should be provided to the Credit Bureau. This information should be used only for permissible purpose. Just to give you an example, the bank cannot just check your data for marketing reasons. So there must be some, for example, a request of credit. So the data cannot be used for any purpose. The information received by the Credit Bureau. So when the bank is pulling a report from the Credit Bureau, the bank must adopt all the necessary measure to keep your data secure in their database. Okay, so it must basically the data must be transferred from the secure place, which is in CRIF house, to a secure place in the bank house. If there are it appears that the data is not accurate, the bank must inform the Credit Bureau within 5 working days, so this information can be replaced or let's say corrected by the Credit Bureau. So it's all about making sure that the data which are provided by the CREE information provider and stored in CRIF, in CREE Bureau database, are 100% correct. Because this has an impact on the can have an impact on the score of the consumer. So it's really, really important that this process is very, very accurate. Obviously, I was mentioning before, we are making all our best effort to ensure your data is protected. We are constantly operating penetration tests on our IT infrastructure, also because we know that there were competitors that in the past had such a problem like data leaks, and we don't want to replicate this issue also here. Now, again, this is probably too much detailed process, but this is basically a summary of how the CREE Bureau works. We have the provider, the bank extracting the data, as I mentioned, periodically sending this data to the CREE Bureau database. We have different level of quality check, as I was mentioning. It's important also to mention here, you see this front office operator. So as a consumer, it's important to mention that you have the right to request one report on yourself once per year for free. So once the CREE Bureau will be 100% fully operating, then you will be able to address CRIF. You can do this by going on the CRIF Bahamas website, or we have a physical address that you can where you can go and you can ask for your credit report, and you will find a front office operator who will assist you. And so once the data is in the CREE Bureau database, then the bank or any others authorized CAP will be able to either inquiry the database and check what is the report on a specific client, will be able also to monitor if there is some change in the status of the same person, and also update the application inquiry, meaning that once you are applying for a credit loan, there will be present in our database the information that you applied for a credit card, for example. Yeah, so this is the first information that we store, and then obviously depending on the bank, but this process can take hours or days. Once the bank decides whether to approve, so to grant this loan or a credit card, or to reject it, then this will be an information that must go to the credit bureau to update about the outcome of the credit application. So the credit card was rejected or was approved. But we can see some more detail about this in the credit report sample. What we say here is that basically we used to say garbage in, garbage out. So if we receive not accurate data, unfortunately, the result will be that we will provide not accurate data. So it's our main interest to really push all the CAPs to provide correct data. But on the other hand, it's also important that consumers themselves are taking care of the data they provide to for example, to the bank where they have an existing credit line, because sometimes it happens, for example, that we ask for a loan to the bank A, and we have granted this loan, and then after 1 year we are applying for a credit card to a bank B, and we are providing different data because we changed our address for any reason. So it's important that all the data that we provide to our banks are as much as possible updated. So we have an updated set of information in our database.
And Enrique, I just want to add, as you go to the next few slides here, that the government did put into the legislation this as a 5-day clause. If there's an error that's been identified, you can reach out to the bank and they have an obligation to fix that information. So the credit providers have an obligation to ensure that the data that is in there is correct. So if you see something that's not correct, you could reach out to the bank and say, listen, this is not accurate. There's a 5-day obligation to expediently fix your data. So just want you to know that. And so this slide here deals with what's going to be in that credit report. And so for us in the Bahamas, our unique identifier, as you well know, is the NIB number. So that's the number that's unique to all of us who live here, who work here. And so that's one of the identifying factors on the report. It's also going to be, of course, your name, middle name, place of birth, your passport or driver's license, your address, your employment data. If you're a company as a sole trader, it'll be the business name, the registration number, the VAT number. If you're a legal entity, of course, the company name, the registration number, the VAT number, the TIN, address, etc. So these are going to be the identifiers for the subject, and we're calling us the persons who are own their credit report, who the information is on. We're the subjects, the data subjects, and these are the identifiers that will be on that report. And of course, it's going to have details and your history of payments, how many loans you have, when you started the loan amount, how the frequency of the payments, the collateral that you put against that, the past due amount, the past due days. So this section is the critical section that's going to be there on how you've managed your credit in recent times. And of course, every time you inquire, that's noted too. So if you go into 5 banks and ask for 5 loans applications, that information, your number of inquiries is going to be on that report as well. And then if you're linked to anybody, and I like to emphasize this link, because if you co-sign with somebody, if you're married to someone and they're linked to your report, their credit information will be tied to yours. And that could have a positive or negative effect. So when you're signing as a guarantor or your co-borrower, be aware of that information on you, it's going to be linked to somebody else. And so that's important for you to understand as your credit report is generated. And then of course, there's a lot of other additional information that's going to be there that may impact the way your score is calculated. And so I think the next two slides kind of shows how it looks. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this slide is very important. I mean, for the Bahamian people who are not familiar with the Credit Bureau concept, and of course they will have an impact due to the introduction of the Credit Bureau. So it's very important, and this is why we are doing not only today, but we are trying to have as many meetings with consumers as well, not only with the CAPs, in order to do some kind of education. That pass me the term. So they will be aware of how the information included in the report can affect the evaluation of the bank during a credit application process. So we really want everybody in Bahamas to be aware of this, so they have more possibilities, they have opportunity to somehow not being passive, but to actively let's say do something. Yeah, exactly. So this is something that we really take care of. In the next slides, we simply have the same details, but more in the form of a report sample that Shell was mentioning before. So as you can see, we have data, the data subject in here. We have the data from the different providers, which are combined together in order to provide a summary of the status connected to that specific client. We have the payment history related to the last 24 months. And of course, in this example, you can see a generic consumer loan, and you can see here how in the last 7 months this loan was repaid. In this case, it was paid on time, so you have all green here. And additional information that are used by banks to evaluate the credit worthiness of their client. This is again what I was mentioning before. So you have the information regarding the application phase. It can be requested, refused, or renounced. So if you have a this is something that normally banks are using to avoid the credit shopping phenomenon. So they can actually see if somebody in the last, for example, 24 hours was trying to get a loan from 7 different banks. And here you can see the information about all these 7 applications and what is the status of each of them. This is a powerful credit risk tool that banks will have.
To use. Okay, and this slide here basically says that you're gonna get a score. So everyone's gonna have a 3-digit number that's gonna help the banks understand how you manage your credit. And so of course, if you're around 250, you're gonna be considered in tranche J, which is extremely high risk. If you're around 500, you're gonna be considered tranche A, which is very low risk. So of course, the banks wanna give, depending on the bank's risk tolerance, they're gonna decide which category of clients they want to give a credit facility to. And so just to understand, not every bank will deny you because you may be D or E or F. Some banks may be okay with giving a loan to someone who's medium high, who falls in the G category, understanding full well that you may pay a high interest rate, or you may have to put more collateral. So the banks will determine their risk appetite, and then they will decide at which category of clients they want to give a loan to. So you're going to fall on one of these tranches, and the banks then will decide if you're going to only have A or only have Bs or nobody that's under H, but that's entirely up to the bank. So just understand that you will be risk rated, you have a score, and you'll fall into one of these tranches. Next slide.
Thank you, Shel. I just wanted to add something regarding the table you see on the right side, the exclusion rules, because this is something that in case such scenario is presented, for example, the client has only contract as a guarantor or the subject falls below score range. So these are all scenarios where the score is not generated. Okay, so this is, they are not considered as information affecting the score. So again, this is something that we think consumers should be aware of, so they can have a better management of their credit position within the Credit Bureau database. What are the factors which are influencing the scores? This is a summary because the score is the analytics behind the score are quite complex, as you can imagine. But I mean, any negative information is obviously affecting the score. As Shell was mentioning before, there is an analysis on the credit history of co-applicant or guarantor, or also companies owned by a customer. So this is a useful element for the risk assessment of the customer. The behavior, I mean, obviously the payment pattern of a customer is a key element in the definition of the score. Just to give you an example, a customer with a long-term loan who always paid on time will be considered as less risky compared to a customer with a short-term loan, but who didn't pay on time in the past. So there are different variables which are considered. It's a complex matrix that was implemented. All of them eventually contribute to the final outcome of the score that you see here, split in these different ranges.
And Enrique, if I could jump in here, I just want to highlight a few things about, just we can go back to that last slide.
Sure.
Just I think a lot of times we don't understand, and well, we have not been accustomed in the Bahamas of how a lot of things impact our credit worthiness. For example, legal proceedings. If you a lot of times people go through legal proceedings, they may go to the divorce settlement, or the bank, the court may have charged them with paying a bill, some alimony or some child support that originally may not have been even considered in your financial package, but because these legal proceedings will impact your ability to pay, if you've declared bankruptcy, that's not a law that we've used a lot in the Bahamas. I was told a couple of months that the government is actually looking at our bankruptcy laws. And so if you declare bankruptcy, I mean, it's a big thing in the US. People do it all the time. We have not done it a lot here in the Bahamas, but if you declare bankruptcy and you said, I can't pay my loans, that impacts your credit score. Like I said, if you're having some legal proceeding, some charge upon you that requires you to pay a bill every month, that is gonna impact your credit score. And Enrique have mentioned a lot of other ones about your behavioral patterns, your liquidity, how much money you use every month. You know, a lot of times we just get deductions, and our pay, all of our pay comes out and we get like 90% reduction, deductions from our pay. And so we left with the minimal amounts every month that impacts our credit score. And so these the factors we want you to be mindful of, because these are the things that are going to impact you that you may not be thinking about. And so I just wanted to highlight these risk factors. And so usually when I give presentations, I spend a lot of time here, but in the interest of time, we're going to move on. But just so you understand that there are some factors other than the paying your loans that will impact the way your credit score is calculated. And
Thank you,
I
Shel.
think we're at the end. I think the other, go ahead,
Yes.
Enrique, you want to add something?
Yeah, well, these are, let's say, probably things that we already mentioned before regarding the monitoring tools. And I think we can maybe now start a discussion if there will be some questions that the audience would like to ask. We are here happy to answer.
Yep. So, and we really, go ahead, Shell, if you were going to say something.
So now I'm just going to say too, Matt, a lot of people probably thinking like, how is this going to impact me? How is it going to benefit me? You know, and we have these last 3 slides here that because we were, you know, we're time sensitive, but really if we do well with the credit bureau, our financial system is going to be more stable. And that's the reason why the international organizations wanted us to consider this. It's going to be beneficial to consumers. A lot of times persons that may not have access to the financial, to banks because they've never been able to get a loan for various reasons. But if you can demonstrate that you can pay your phone bill on time and you paid your utilities on time, you can have a credit score and you may be able to get a loan that ordinarily you may not have had access to because nobody knew you. You didn't have the job that the banks wanted. You may be a store clerk, but now that you've demonstrated and you've created your own credit history that can help you have access to credit. As credit is considered the engine of an economy. So the more persons who have access to credit, the better off we are as a nation. We can have more persons being able to build wealth, to start their own businesses, to get a home. And so a lot of persons may have been excluded historically just because they were not on the radar. Banks would not have considered them because they didn't work for the government, or they didn't work for a bank, or they didn't work at Atlantis. But maybe they work in a store or a gas station, and they would not have been considered before. But the ability to be on a level playing field and have a credit score, we think that's going to be a benefit to the consumers. And so our economy is going to benefit, consumers are going to benefit. Of course, the whole infrastructure in the Bahamas will look a lot better if we are more stable, because we're going to be able to give the best loans to persons that are going to pay. So delinquency rates will drop. And we'll have the best clients. And it's not the clients who make the most money, it's the clients who are most responsible. And that's what we want to encourage. And that's what the credit bureau is going to help us with as a country. So thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, so we appreciate that, Shell. Very helpful information. Ms. Hepburn has a question here in the chat. She is asking, what will be the estimated cost of the credit report?
Well, as I was mentioning before, the report is for free. I mean, the consumer has the right to have a credit report per year for free. So this is given to the consumer for free.
What about additional reports, Enrico?
We are talking about around $12. I need to check this because we already have a price list for the CAP. But if the question is related to what would be the price for a consumer, then this should be the price, but it is indicated in the website. I believe it's $12.
10.
Yep.
It's 10.
Yep.
And so, Matt, I
Marissa's
think the way
saying
that's
10.
gonna work, Matt, I think the banks, when you go and approach the bank for your loan, they're gonna probably bill it into whatever fees you're paying now. So I don't think it's gonna be it's a big expense, considering, you know, that's gonna be used in a way to help them determine who you are. So
Right.
some banks may give you the cost outright, or they may build it into their fee structure. So we're not actually sure how banks are doing different things with that. But that's our estimated fee of what it may cost.
Gotcha. You know, one of the thoughts that came to mind, and guys, I see your questions coming in here. Please continue to bring the questions. Is it going to be retroactive? And so if I may have had a poor credit history in the past, is that going to come with me? Is that going to follow me into this credit bureau?
Enrique, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is something which was regulated by the Credit Reporting Act issued by the central bank. So the data which are currently being contributed by the CIPs go back to April 2018. So the data which will be available in the Credit Bureau database are going back to April 2018.
Okay, yeah, very helpful. Okay,
You're welcome.
given the level of indebtedness within the Bahamas, could many Bahamians in fact be cut off from the banking system, even if for a time, due to the credit bureau?
Well,
Off.
yeah. No, I mean,
So
let me
I
just.
don't know if we could decide who gets cut off, but I do think that I think banks are going to understand a little bit more about consumers. I know back in the day there was a time when you could go to 5 banks, and then when you get to Royal and they say, how many loans do you have? And you say none. That's going to change. You're not going to be able to hide and not be able to give information that's not accurate. So I'm not sure a person's going to get cut off. Like I said earlier, banks can decide to still give you credit depending on their risk appetite. But I'm thinking clearly it's not going to be a situation where you can, you know, Bahamians have lived for a long time, not told the entire story about the amount of loans or the amount of debt we have. And I think that's going to go away for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I was mentioning before, and I totally agree with Shell. First of all, again, the decision, the ultimate decision is taken by the bank. So whatever is the information included in the report, the bank, based on the banks based on their risk appetite, will decide whether to grant the loan or not. We are still at the beginning of this process, so if you wish, I can give you rather I can share the experience of other countries where based on the IMF input, CRIF or other players like CRIF established a credit bureau. Eventually, the goal is to improve the financial inclusion. And there are plenty of studies and reports that you can find easily on the internet, where there are statistics showing that when you establish a credit bureau in a country, this facilitates financial inclusion. And this is the reason why actually this is the credit bureau is established. So definitely the macro trend in an economy where the credit bureau is established is rather the opposite, that there will be more financial inclusion. Of course, people will have to understand how to let's say how to they will have to be more familiar with how the credit bureau works, how their data are processed. And one of the consequences of establishing a credit bureau is that people start to be more aware of this issue. So they start more like taking care of what are the data which are in the credit bureau. So they know that the quality of the data can affect their possibility to have access to credit in the future. So they behave in the way that aim at improving their credit, their credibility in the system. So the medium, let me say, term effect is that the financial inclusion is improved.
And just thanks, Enrico. I'm too.
Understood.
You know, a lot of times
Understood.
in the Bahamas, our bill is due on the 15th, and we pay it at the end of the month, and we say, yeah, I paid in February, but it was due on the 15th. So it'll help us be a little bit more responsible. We could have paid on the 15th. We probably just, I ain't got to the bank. I got things to do. And so we are careless about, being on time. And I always, had these discussions, with persons, and you be like, you get interest charges when you pay late. When you pay late on your credit card, it's $20. When you pay late with your cable bill. So if you're responsible, you can save yourself some money, and it just means adjusting things so that you could make these payments on time. And of course, now the credit scoring, the credit bureau is going to help you be more cognizant and try to pay these things on time so that it doesn't impact your credit score. So I think it's going to help us be a little bit more responsible go forward. And I think for the long term, the effect is going to be positive, if I had to guess. And just to add another thing to that. So because you have a credit score, like I said on an earlier slide, you may have a F or G credit score, but the banks still give you a loan. They just give you at a high rate. And banks have always been doing that. I could go to a bank and get 4%. You can go and get 20%. And for the same loan, because you've just out of college. I've worked for 40 years. So, banks have had these type of things they've been looking at for a while, and they've been risk rating us. And so it's the same concept, you might be able to get the loan, but you may get it at a higher rate. And so the benefit of having a good credit score, you may be able to say, listen, I only want a 2% loan. So it's going to have, a positive effect as well if you do well with your credit score.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Next question is, what is the official day zero for the credit? Let me make sure I'm reading this properly. What is the official day zero for the credit bureau history in the Bahamas? And I think that was addressed. This is an anonymous question. And so the person who asked the question, please clarify if that question was answered by the April 2018 retroactivity. I believe that's what that question is about. So where is it going to start?
Sorry, Mr. Whiting, if I'm interfering, but if the question is when will the credit bureau will be live, maybe this was I'm trying to interpreting a little bit the question. So the just in case, because this could be also a question coming from somebody else. So the credit bureau is, from the technical point of view, is currently live since the 30th of April. So the credit bureau is in production. Is currently live. Then of course the populating the credit bureau with all the necessary information is a process, and currently all the CAPs, somebody slower, somebody quicker, are contributing the data, are testing the system, providing the data, which will be eventually stored in our database. So officially, if this was the question, so the day zero officially was the 30th of April, but the concrete process of populating the database with all the data is still ongoing, and we see actually very good progress at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. And the person who did ask the question said that the question was answered, but it does answer the next question about what's taking so long. And Enrico, you addressed that by obviously now the collection of that data requires some third party participation.
Yeah, exactly. It's as I was mentioned at the beginning, I was mentioning the Credit Bureau is not just an IT project. It's a country project because of the impact it has on the economy, and because of all the stakeholders that are involved in such an important initiative for the country. But it is also true that part of it is an IT project, and this with an IT project comes all the issues that you can have from technical point of view in terms of data quality, but not in terms of content, but in terms of data format. Banks and in general CAP have to go through some internal data quality, data cleaning in order to contribute the data with the required level of quality that we were mentioning before. We are asking credit information providers to provide the information with the highest level of quality, because if such a level of quality is not met, the data are simply rejected. So that's why the process is taking some time, because we need to ensure that the data stored in our database is 100% correct, both from the formal point of view and from the substantial point of view.
Understood. Understood. So we got about 5 more minutes. So Enrico and Shell and the rest of your team, let's see if we can get through the rest of these questions in the next few minutes. The next question is, does the credit score also consider assets or just debt and payment history? Is it up to banks to consider assets relative to credit score to determine ability and capacity to repay loans? And so assets or just debt?
I think the banks will do a net worth statement. I think they're doing that nowadays. If you go in, they actually for a net worth statement. So a list of all your assets and liabilities. And so I think the credit score may be like a supplement report. The credit score doesn't ask for your assets. And that's not a figure that we ask for, but I think the banks will use it as they do now. The actual net worth statement where you outline all that you own, and that impacts your credit ability from their perspective. I think it's how I envision that will work.
Yeah, exactly. I agree, Shell, because again, the Credit Bureau score will be one of the variable, if you wish, one of the elements which will be taken into account by the banks within their all credit risk assessment system. Yeah, so we will be, of course, there will be banks who will give a higher weight, like a bigger weight to the Credit Bureau score. Some other banks a lower relevance to the same. But again, it in our experience around the globe, this is the normal practice. They are including the Credit Bureau score as one of the elements within the all credit risk assessment frame they implement.
Good. Next question is there a framework yet for reporting credit info on people's accounts? Example, landlord, tenant.
No, at the moment, this is not, as Shell was mentioning at the beginning, there is such a idea or plan, but at the moment, among the CAP, which have been designated by the central bank, there are not the landlords, for example, that might contribute the information about how the tenant is paying the rent. Yeah, so this is something that currently is not happening, but this is a very interesting question, especially since we are today in the context of real estate, and one of the actually the title of the seminar is how the Credit Bureau may affect the real estate market. I mean, and obviously I don't have a precise answer for how the real estate market as a whole can be affected in terms of price trends or number of transactions, I don't know, raise or reduction. But definitely what we see in other markets, and I'm actually now bringing my direct experience. I'm, as Marisa was mentioned at the beginning, I'm currently based in Poland because I'm also responsible for the non-banking bureau that we have in Poland, and the information coming from the Credit Bureau are actually used by can be used by landlord or by the real estate agencies or the property management agencies to evaluate the tenant, the potential tenant. And what we see, well, in terms of impact on the real estate agency, I can definitely tell you that there are several more and more real estate agencies, more and more property management agencies, which are adding an additional service to their clients, meaning the landlord, because they are able to select to do a kind of pre-screening of the potential tenants. So this is an added value service that, thanks to the Credit Bureau information, the real estate agency can offer to their clients. Moreover, what we see is that thanks to the credit information that are offered by our Credit Bureau, the real estate agencies can optimize their activity, because you can imagine if you have, I don't know, 10 candidates for one apartment, you can already pre-select which one are, have a positive credit history. You can decide, for example, to have to start the process only with a part of them, with those that has a good credit history. So you are basically optimizing your time by doing so. So there are several good aspects which connect the real estate industry with the credit information system, like the Credit Bureau run by CRIF. Other kind of macroeconomic, let's say, trends, so how this can impact the real estate market, this is really hard to say. Also because if the number of transactions, and now we are talking about not renting, but the buying sales market, yeah. So in this case, again, whether based on a credit information report, a bank will decide to accept the mortgage loan application or not, it's not something that is decided by CRIF. Again, is decided by the bank. So it's hard to predict what will be the behavior of the banks based on the new information source that has been established in Bahamas. So if there will be less transaction because of the banks will have a lower risk appetite, or more transaction because this will increase the level of transparency, and then banks will be more willing to disburse mortgage loans. So this is something that at the moment we cannot predict, but we will be more than happy in let's say 1 year time, for example, or a couple of years time, to produce such a statistics and see how the Credit Bureau has been able to influence the mortgage market, for example, and therefore this obviously can have also other impacts also on price trends, but this is, I think, too early now to predict.
Understood. So Shell, what I might ask and Enrico and Marissa, if you guys could maybe assist. We got a bunch of questions coming in, and let's take a few more of them for Enrico and you to answer live. But let's also start to answer some of them in the chat or in the question and answer segment of the page. So the next question is, you mentioned that now you're collecting all the data, Enrico. How long is it anticipated? What is the projected time to populate all the data? And then a second question is, could I get an actual report today based on the data that's already been collected? So that's a two-part question.
All right, so I will start from the second question, the second part of the question, which is the easiest one. And the answer is, at the moment, it is possible to actually make an inquiry to the system. What is the probability that you will actually find something? At the moment, very low, because we are not at the high level of population of the database. So this is just to answer the second question. Regarding the first question, when there will be, please remind me that the first question was when the database will be fully populated, or what was exactly the question?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
All right. Okay. So this, as I was mentioning before, the populating process of the system. I mean, as the word process itself, let's say, underlie, it's a process. I mean, and at the moment, we are doing all the necessary steps to accelerate this, to have more and more data coming from the CAPs. I'm quite optimistic that this will be, we will have a good level of population of the system quite soon. But it is very hard at the moment to really say exactly when.
Understood.
So
go
Mark,
ahead,
let me
Shell.
just go through a couple of your questions quickly so that we can get some persons answered. So we're not going to be connected to the US system at all. Our credit data information is just going to be local information. So we're not going to be online and connected to the US. So your US activity will not be impacted at all by your credit score. And someone asked if there's a possibility for you to get it online. So right, the way we envision this happening is that the banks will go online and reach out to Marissa's team and get us a credit report. And we're also going to probably have a link on the website where you can reach out and get a credit score. The government has said in legislation that you can have one free report a year. Otherwise, when you go for credit, for some type of credit loan, you have to pay whatever the bank cost is passed on to you. But you get an opportunity to have one free report a year. And you can either reach out online to Marissa and team, or probably go to their office face-to-face and request a credit report. I'm not sure exactly what the start date is going to be, but you can start doing that. But that'll be publicized so that you know, okay, it's been a year, you can go and get your credit report. And that's going to be free, that one report. The government wants you to be able to get it at least once a year free. The credit score allow for refinancing of existing loans. I'm sure when you go to refinance, the bank's gonna ask you, to get all that information on your current loan situation. The credit report will impact how the bank make that decision. So it could help. We're thinking hopefully it does. If your score looks good enough, the bank will want to help you refinance. The data has been populated, like Enrique said. We at the mercy, so to speak, of the 7 commercial banks, and those are the first data providers that we've been working with, and so that has been going a little slow, slower than we anticipated originally. So once that gets up there, we'll be able to generate scores. And I think Enrique mentioned that utility companies are now a part of it as well, so they'll be giving over information. And so as new people get added, the scores will be building, but we can begin giving scores, I think, once we get all the banks online and with the data in our database. How will the credit scores impact a young person with no credit history? I think there was a slide where we said there was an exclusion list, where if you never had credit, you probably won't get a score. The goal is for you to try though, and get your foot back and see if you can get some type of credit facility. A lot of banks will give you a credit card if you give them the collateral to back it, and maybe give you $1,000 credit card, and you got a fixed deposit backing it, so you can start to build that history. But you won't be able to get a score if you don't have anything in the system now. If none of the banks have you on their radar, then you won't be able to get a credit score. Mark, you want to go to any specific ones, or you just want me to continue with the list?
Let's look through the list. I think you're doing a good job there. Banks, how a credit score, no foul play. This I guess is a fair one. A lot of people have a concern about foul play. What kind of systems does CRIF have in place to disallow that?
So I think Enrique spent some time talking about how we protecting your data. Data security is a big thing everywhere now. With hackers around, this is huge. CRIF has invested quite a bit of money in ensuring that the systems are secure. And of course, the banks have done that historically as well. So we have not had any incidents, and we're hoping that continues. The goal is to ensure that your data is protected, because we've had a lot of cases with Facebook, and other hospitals have lost data, and there's been so many incidents that have not gone well if we look into the international realm. So we don't want to be on that list. of data getting exposed that wasn't properly disseminated. So data protection is a big thing, and CRIF takes that very seriously. So as much as we can say now that your data is secure, we want to try our best to ensure that that continues to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's very good. You know, one question that stood out to me that kind of connected with something I had here was a company like a Furniture Plus, for example. Are they going to be an optional, I think you call it a CAP?
So they're going to be, so it's been on that slide that showed the mandatory list for the banks, and then the central bank governor by designation can add people. And they had a category called hire purchase. That way, that's where Furniture Plus will fit. So any type of, anyone given credit outside of the normal financial institution will fall into that. So the credit unions already contemplated the car loan, persons who give the car loans. And of course, Furniture Plus will be, once the central bank designate them, they will be a part of the mix. So eventually down the road, I expect that every type of credit facility will be impacting your credit report, not in the first year or so. In the first few months, first few years, it's probably just going to be the information that the bank and the credit and the utility companies have. And
Right.
so we can intend to build on that, and the governor of the central bank has the ability to add by designation new providers of credit information on you. And so as we mature, I think it's going to be a complete package, including even the tenancy stuff. But right now it's just limited to the banks in the first instance.
Okay.
Right. I mean, again, to bring you some example from different geographies, there are some credit bureaus where the employee is reporting the information whether the employer paid his salary on time. So there can be like different let's say use case, let's call them, that can be implemented in the credit bureau. Now, I'm not saying that the central bank in Bahamas will decide to do so, but just to give you an idea of how wide can be the possibilities
the scope could be
given by the
far-reaching. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been extremely informative. I think the people on here, and definitely myself, really, you know, to Shell's point, it's going to call on us to be a lot more responsible. You know, we might be to a degree negligent with things that are off book right now, like a Cable Bahamas, or things that we know that we might have a little bit of leeway with. And what this is telling us here, that it is calling on us to be extremely and a lot more responsible with our borrowing and the way that we handle our expenses. So let's take this information, let's use this information, let's be proactive about it, so that when it comes here, that we are positively affected as opposed to negatively affected. And let's implore the people within our sphere of influences as well to start to take this seriously, because when it comes into play, this could have a tremendous effect on their ability to get a car loan, to rent a property. You know, I was thinking about how in the States, this could to a degree affect how you date, right? People in the States are very concerned about what is your credit score before I could take you seriously as a spouse. And so this
you best credit score bad.
I'm telling you. And so it is important that before it comes here, that we are very proactive about it. We're extremely appreciative to CRIF and putting on this webinar in conjunction with our company, OAK Bahamas. We've partnered with the CFA Society, and we've partnered with Drewber Solutions as well. They're a financial wellness company who, if you have some credit problems that you want to work towards rectifying, they would be more than helpful or more than willing to help you to do so. So if you had any more questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Feel free to Google CRIF. Their information's online. You can reach out to anyone that spoke here today and find them online as well, and reach out to them directly for questions. We really, really appreciate you staying on with us, even though we went a bit longer. And we hope this information was extremely helpful. And we bid you a good day.
I also
Thank you very
placed the
much.
website in the chat group for everybody. So it's just www.crif.com.bs. And our customer support is customersupport.bs.crif.com.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having us here. And we hope we gave you all the information you wanted to hear. And as Marisa said, please get in touch with us for any additional questions.
Thank you, Enrico.
Thank you, everybody.
All righty, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.